You know, Dan Snell does a killer Jimmy Stewart impression. Dan, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you with us.
Todd. Happy Monday. Yeah, I wish Jimmy Stewart. America needs Jimmy Stewart-like people. That's for sure. Jimmy Stewart. What? You mean to tell me you're going to fly this thing out of here?
And his reference of all the Jimmy Stewart movies, his references from Flight of the Phoenix. That means you're deep-rooted, man.
Yeah, are you calling me old or I'm just seasoned? That means I'm just seasoned in life.
Well-rounded. Our visit with Dan is presented by Marcus and Mack, voted best law firm and best personal injury lawyer 4 years in a row now in the Best of Indiana County contest. Visit them online at marcusandmack.com. I told Dan that the Flight of the Phoenix stuff and all kinds of other things are right across the street at the Jimmy Stewart Museum. So he's booked his flight. He's going to be here later today.
Yeah.
Hey, Dan, let's talk a little bit about the Supreme Court and this thing between the two justices, Barrett and Jackson. That thing broke out, and I don't know if it's something you could see was coming, but certainly you could see the potential was there. There's some kindling in the Supreme Court right now, isn't there?
Yeah, I always hate to see that because the Supreme Court, I hope, is our last hope or last bastion for honor and integrity, and not where we have to attack one side or the other, because unfortunately in Washington or even in local, whether it's Pennsylvania, from the White House to the outhouse across America, it seems like people want to talk about politics in a negative way and point the finger and make other people bad. In this case, I think it was innocent. I don't think there's really too bad of a rift. I think that they have demeanor and honor there in the court. But there's a new book coming out by Justice Barrett called Listening to the Law. So she was interviewed by USA Today and I think a couple other places. So naturally, as a reporter, they're going to ask her tough questions. So they brought that up. And obviously the thought of, hey, they disagree on the issue of the nationwide, the universal injunctions when a district court in some state, California or wherever, somebody issues a ruling that it blocks something that President Trump's trying to do, and then it delays it or blocks it, and then it has to go to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court, in this case, this particular one, 6-3, they said, hey, those can't all stand. The president has more authority than that. So I don't think there's any personal animosity. They just disagree on the ideas.
Yeah. The reaction to it, of course, is predictable, isn't it? The people are going to jump all over it, and they're going to see the kindling, and they're going to try to get some smoke going, and pretty soon a bonfire.
Sure, that's what will happen, and I wish that Chief Justice Roberts would maybe reset his team and just make a statement, hey, we are not going to engage in political talk or any kind of divisiveness like they do, and maybe take it to justice, and he's not afraid to say, we're not going to play the politics. We are about ruling honorably and fairly and with justice for all. And because I don't want that to happen. But yeah, you're always going to have the media want to keep a story alive. But in our days today, gosh, another 2 hours we'll have headline news coming out. So this too shall pass, and it will move into the back pages and not be covered. But I think Justice Barrett will, if you remember Sandra Day O'Connor, appointed by Ronald Reagan, one of my heroes. I write about him in The Winsome Candidate, my book. She was really of sound mind, did great. I think Barrett will, be there a long time and have a great legacy.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that here are these two on opposite sides politically, if you want to put it that way. And you think of Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg and what great friends they were, even though they were on opposite sides most of the time in their opinions about Supreme Court decisions. It just seems like it was a whole different era. There was a different decorum that was practiced in that day.
Yeah, great point. Excellent, because you're right. Is we need to have more leaders that handle themselves like that. Because I learned when I served 5 terms in office, 10 years, and had some great mentors that say it's okay to disagree. You have to just be able to agree to disagree without being disagreeable. And once the vote is taken on the issue, okay, if you lost, you're not going to hold grudges. You move on to the next issue because we're all about serving the place we call home, whether it's Indiana, Pennsylvania, or Overland Park, Kansas, or Nebraska, wherever it might be. It's about public service, not politics.
Yeah, it harkens back as well. You'd mentioned Ronald Reagan. He and Tip O'Neill, politically, they were really on opposite ends of the spectrum, and yet they were great friends. They spent a lot of time together.
Yeah, they did. They were known for that. Tip O'Neill was a hard charger Democrat, Speaker of the House, and he fought Reagan. But then they would just say, "Okay, it's over. Let's go get a beer or whatever it might be." And they were well known to be exactly that model of agree to disagree without being disagreeable. Because it's just, if we want to move forward as a country, we can't have this finger pointing and digging in. And I'm not going to because I don't like you or I lost the previous issue. I'm not going to support anything, even if it's good. Mm-hmm. We stand against it. So the country can do, but we can do better.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to. All right. So I want to get to the root of their disagreement as well, and that was the judicial powers issue that you were talking about. Does it seem as if the lower courts, the smaller courts, if you will, are trying their hardest to put a stop to the president's agenda and the various things that he wants to do? And is it unfair for them to do so?
Yeah, you have judges that obviously were either appointed by a president if they're a district court or rose up through the ranks. And so they may have a political leaning one side or the other. And they're making injunctions and rulings against President Trump. Sometimes it's probably fair to take a look at it and should be done. And sometimes it could be Democrat opposition, in this case, going out and finding a judge that they know will agree with them. The key is really for critical thinking to really analyze is what President Trump's doing good for the country, or is it something that needs to be reviewed? And so in this case, some of these have gone up to the Supreme Court. I don't like seeing President Trump too much act like he's got the Supreme Court in his pocket. That's not good because the perception there is bad. And in this case, district court judges, they've come up through the ranks. They might have been a city judge, or county judge, state judge, and then they're appointed. But normally, like they're human beings, they have a leaning one side or the other, even though they are to use clearly constitutional or law as their basis for ruling. But it will continue. The key is, I think, from the top down, we need to have less politicizing of offices and rulings and more, okay, is this good for the place we call home and America or wherever they would be?
Is there a sense that the Supreme Court is getting pretty tired of it as well, and Chief Justice Roberts is going to issue some sort of blanket ruling, if he can, that is going to put a stop to this?
Well, I think so. It'd be my sense because Justice Roberts is a pretty fair man, and he's not afraid to even stand up to the President of the United States because they are separate, and the President needs to realize that. The Supreme Court is separate. They rule separately, and they stand as the law of the land, and that has to be honored. And internally, again, I hope that he says to his colleagues, his fellow judges, hey, don't get caught up. Don't get caught with a question. If someone tries to put you in a political spin, you just say, talk to Chief Justice Roberts, and I'll talk. And that's where he should leave it, because we can't have the Supreme Court people thinking that it is now political to the maximum, because we've got too much of that in Washington as it is.
Yeah, October's coming really, really fast, and the Supreme Court will be once again in session, and it's really going to, the makeup of the court is one thing, but the way that the justices all interact with one another, some of the arguments that we have heard that have made it into the public forum, it's really a fascinating dynamic right now in that court, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, you look at the history of the appointees, and you have Democrat presidents that get a chance to appoint. In this case, with Justice Jackson, appointed by President Biden, and she's got strong opinions. And I know in one of the interviews, Justice Barrett was asked to define every one of the justices with one word, and she referred to, which is, you shouldn't put a justice in that spot, but she said Hollywood. So apparently Justice Jackson maybe is dramatic. And again, I know they have said both publicly, hey, we have nothing personal. We just disagree on the issues. And so it's tough. And, that last ruling that we've been talking about in district courts, can they have that kind of power? It was 6-3. So that's a pretty decisive decision. And I trust and believe they will continue to respect each other and not hold animosity. And I hope that officials on the Democratic Party or the Republican Party don't always try to pressure them in any way, because they should just say, stop. Don't do that.
Dan Snell has been kind enough to join us here this morning, spend some time talking Supreme Court. You mentioned the book, The Winsome Candidate. Tell me about where it's still available, yes?
Oh, yeah. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart. You can order it online. It's a book I took. My first book was The Winsome Way. It's a way of living life to discover the extraordinary around you. It's an outward focus, how to serve other people. So I took my 10 years in public office, tied it into my first book. And if you're thinking about running for office, or you're thinking about helping somebody run for office, or understanding what public service is about, I encourage people to take a look at The Winsome Candidate. And you can go to thewinsomecandidate.com, thewinsomecandidate.com, to check out a little bit more about what I believe in.
It does sound like it's a subject for a future series here on Indiana in the Morning with Dan Snell. Hey, Dan, thanks so much for visiting us today. Appreciate it.
Okay, stay winsome out there.
It is the voice of Indiana County